Happy 2025. Welcome back to Waterproof Records with Jacob Givens. It's been a minute since we've sat down and talked about music, but I'm going to take this time right now to sit down and talk with you about last year. Yes, it's going to be an episode that focuses on my top 10 specifically from 2024, but I'll also talk a little bit about the honorable mentions as well. And I know you've been waiting on this episode for a while. I try to get it out at the end of the year, but now it's just at the start of the year. We're only a couple days in, but I still think it's a good time to review some of the best albums, experiences that I had so that I can share them with you. You might have different albums of the year, but that's what we're here to talk about. So let's get into it. It's time to talk about my top 10 albums of 2024. Let's go.
Things are gonna change, I can feel it.
If this gonna be that kind of party, I'm gonna...
Waterproof Records. Waterproof Records. Waterproof Records with Jacob Givens.
2025 is one of those dates that just doesn't sound real. It doesn't sound real to me. It sounds like a future date from a sci-fi film that I saw in the 1980s. When you hear it, you're like, 2025. I mean, that's the crazy thing. It's the 25-year difference from the back when I was born, 1978. You think that 1975 to 2000, that's 25 years. But to think that from 2000 to here is another 25 years just blows my mind because it just doesn't feel that long. And I know that people who are my age or, 30s, time gets faster, doesn't it? I was just talking to my kids the other day about how my 10-year-old, he said that this past year moved so slow for him. And I was like, I remember that. I remember being in school as a kid and every year felt like a journey. But what am I doing? I'm already getting into the subject without at least talking at the start of the year about DistroKid. You know about him. If you've been listening to the show for a while, I'm sure you use him. But in case you just tuned in because you want to listen to my top 10 albums, you need to use my special link, distrokid.com/VIP/waterproof for 30% off your first year of using DistroKid. So what does that mean? That means when you use that link, distrokid.com/VIP/waterproof, you upload your music and you're going to save 30% for the cost of sharing your music on every streaming platform, YouTube included, for the first year. And that's a lot of good savings. So highly recommend you take advantage of that. I take advantage of it and you should too. DistroKid is the fastest way for you to get your absolutely kick-ass music out to the rest of the world. So do it. Now we can talk music. Now we can talk bands. I actually am kind of glad. I got to tell you all something. I'm glad that I waited until I made a mini version of my top 10 video on social media. Because if you saw that already, I kind of already divulged what the albums are. No surprises. I told you what they are. But the conversation that has come from the comments has been very interesting. And there's been some good, there's been some bad. But I wanted to talk to you about it today because it is an unusual thing when you are a person who puts your face, your life, your personality on social media. And I think the most unusual reaction is when you share things that you enjoy and people are like, no, you didn't get this right. You missed this album. And I just think it's unusual. It's just such a strange thing. There's so many people in this world that kind of communicate with other people in such odd ways that I wouldn't do it personally. I'm not trying to be critical of how you handle life or talk to people. I've just never been much of a fan of somebody who, like, if they were to sit down and they were to say, these are my favorite foods of all time. And I was like, oh, no. You missed, sushi. You missed, Indian chicken tikka masala. You missed it. You didn't get it. It was on your list. You should know better. It's just a strange instinct. But somebody reminded me early on when making these videos and this content is that music lovers are passionate. And sometimes our passion blinds our ability to function like a normal, like, hey, I see where you're coming from and have rational passion can often make you have this like burning desire to tell somebody because you loved something so deeply. You want them to have the same experience. But if that's what you feel when you see somebody share an opinion and you're like, no, I need to tell them that they don't know. They should hear from this. I will tell you that I think 99.9999999% of the time that is not being received as thank you for your passion. It's kind of just, it's like just kind of smashing windows and coming in and just being like, live my life experience. It really does. I don't know how else to tell you that. It really comes across like that it's just, kind of like pushing somebody to say, I know you just talked about what you enjoy. Forget all that. Here's what I enjoy. And if that's how you go through life, you should just make a channel, make videos, make a vlog, make a podcast. I mean, there's 100 million podcasts in the world. What's one more? Why not start up Dave's favorite music? And then anytime somebody's like, well, what's your favorite music? You can go, here you go. That's my recommendation for you. But I'm never going to be able to stop it from happening. Never going to be able to. And I would imagine the majority of people who listen to this show, I doubt any of you. I mean, maybe some of you were like, oh, you know what? Did you hear this album? Because those were the more civil responses to that video. They were the more like, did you not know about this one? Let's talk about the best albums for me in 2024. And I'm going to start off with the band name that will cause you to lower your volume if you have children in the car. But the band is called Mannequin Pussy. And whenever I say that band name to somebody who's not familiar, they're like, oh, wow. They're almost kind of like, are you just like throwing together words to make up a band that I've never heard of? Or are you just trying to out-cool me with the most indie underground band name? And I'm like, no, it's a real band. And then there's others you say too, and they're like, oh yeah, hell yeah, Mannequin Pussy's amazing. That band name, it's just, look, that word, especially for those of us who grew up in houses that had strict guidelines, religious upbringing, the stress of not being able to curse or swear, certain words were not allowed. You went to church. There's words that when you hear them, they bring up decades worth of training, right? And pussy is one of them. I mean, I can say it as a grown-ass man, but it's still one of those words that takes me right back to being like ashamed, scared, in certain company to say that, because it's just one of those things you're taught for so many years with your mother, and the authority figures around you that you just shouldn't say things like that. But one of the fun things about this band is I saw them at Best Friends Forever. I actually saw several of the bands on my top 10 at some festivals this year. And one of the best things about this band is she really gets up on stage. Missy, she gets on stage and she really pushed us as an audience to like say the word out loud, because she probably deals with it and the band deals with it all the time as to what comes along with that word, the way that people react. It really is surprising what just language can do to us as a people. And she encourages us to all say it out loud as a crowd. And that was like a very cathartic moment for all of us there to just like shout it out loud. And for those of you who don't feel any kind of oppression to not say those things, cool, you don't have any of those things that lay on your brain and your mind and your heart about saying those words. But when she encouraged us to just shout it out like in this very animalistic, primal way, it was liberating, it was bonding, and it was cool. This band is awesome. They came out of Philadelphia in 2010, and the lineup has changed a lot over the years. And I really think that of the original members, I mean, really Missy is probably the singer and guitar player, is pretty much the original source member of when this band gets together, because there's been other drummers and other musicians that have come and gone out of the band. They had Anastasios Paul was on drums initially, and then there was Drew Adler on drums initially. But once we get to Kayleen Redding on drums and we get to Collins Bear Regisford, he just goes by Bear, and then finally Maxine Steen, that is the four of Mannequin Pussy, and then they had a touring keyboards, Carolyn Haynes. So this album, I Got Heaven, when I first heard it, and I put this in my best of 2024 album contenders at the start of the year, because I was captured by it. I mean, songs like Loud Bark, and then you get to the frenetic, okay, And then you get to these very like nice, melodic, beautiful songs. Sometimes it went all over the place. And I remember looking on YouTube to see if I could see a music video of watching kind of this band. And I was captivated. I was like, I like everything I'm seeing here. And I listened to the album several times and it was really grabbing me. But then when I saw them perform at Best Friends Forever Festival, I was like, holy shit. Incredible live performance. She brought such feral energy to the stage. She owned it. All of them were so good. Bear was amazing to watch. Kayleen's an incredible drummer who is inspired by Metallica, so she comes from like a lot heavier music backgrounds inspiring this band. And Maxine's amazing on guitar. It was just such a great combination of musicians and I loved it. So Mannequin Pussy, I Got Heaven had to get a spot in my top 10. Then we go on to The Last Dinner Party. This album is called Prelude to Ecstasy. Now, one of their songs got really, really big. And it was like the blown up, kind of their biggest hit, which is Nothing Matters. But this band has only been in existence since 2021. And it all formed in London. And most of them are from London, England. I think one member is from Australia. But it's basically Abigail Morris, Lizzie Mayland, Emily Roberts, and Georgia Davies, and Aurora Nishevici. I totally botched that, I'm sure. But those are the members of The Last Dinner Party, and they don't have a permanent drummer. They use a touring drummer, Casper Miles, as of now. But this sound is like chamber pop. It's very like all the vocals of all these women together. There's touches of it that is like ABBA, in the best way. I'm an ABBA fan. That is not an insult. That's a praise. And there's Kate Bush sounds in here. The album opens up with this orchestral Prelude to Ecstasy. It's just very baroque, chamber pop. I'm trying to think of the words that I would use to describe it, but it was just the instrumentation. It's very big. His Last Dinner Party. It just sounded like this like decadent feast of music. And I was really taken by it. Like I said, Nothing Matters was the big hit, but when you go through the album, it starts out with that opening instrumental, and then you get into Burn Alive, and it starts kind of like dark and spooky, and then it just picks up with this up-tempo pop goodness, and I was like, yes, I'm all about what this band is doing. So if you like the things that I referenced, then I think you'll enjoy The Last Dinner Party. This next one was kind of somewhat of a more surprise entry, as in I didn't see it coming. It came out of left field. Like I'd said, I enjoyed Mannequin Pussy. I'd enjoyed Last Dinner Party from listening to them online. But Foxing was a band that I had never heard of. And I was at Best Friends Forever Festival, and I was hanging out with a group of people that I had just met at the festival. And I know that when I talked about my Midwestern emotions, that episode about that time and about that festival, I went into great detail about a lot of things there. But I was there, was seeing a bunch of artists, and this group of friends that I made at the festival were like, "You want to go see Foxing?" And I was like, "Who are Foxing?" And they're like, "You should check them out." So I go over there, and not only do I really enjoy them, I'm just pleasantly surprised by this gathering of musicians on stage. The lead singer's kind of this unassuming, mustache, and he starts out his set just kind of singing softly, and then all of a sudden the guitar player starts screaming, and it gets super heavy, like we're dealing in like death heaven realms of just like this super intense screaming. And I was like, what is going on? So right then and there, I knew I was seeing something special with Foxing, but it was when I listened to this album, which I believe is their fourth. They've been going since, I think, 2011 out of St. Louis, Missouri. And there's been several albums that they've put out, and the lineup has changed over the years. There have been different members who started, who've now left. But as of right now, it's Connor Murphy on vocals, John Helwig on drums, and then Eric Hudson on guitar, and Brett Torrance on bass. And that's the current lineup of Foxing. And when I got the album, I was not prepared for the dreamscapes, for the different twists and turns that this band would take me on. And there was literally a moment where I was sitting in my car and I was listening to Foxing, and it was the song, I have to tell you, I'm going to play some of it for you. Sorry, I'm scrolling down my list here. Here it is. Okay. So Greyhound is amazing. It's long, but it was cleaning. It just totally washed over me. The song Cleaning. I was sitting there and I was like, this is incredible. And I love it when music and albums can surprise me like that. Because oftentimes you buy an album because you like the way that the song sounds, and then the album delivers that sound in different ways, in different, styles, but that's why you listen to it. This was chaotic in the places that I was going, because a lot of the time, besides the kind of the timbre of his voice and like the mixing, I was like, yeah, it's the same band, but they were just playing in different terrains a lot of the way. And I was really impressed by it. So it was a pleasant introduction in my life. I'm really happy to have discovered Foxing, especially so late in the year. Now, the next album is another discovery from a festival. And I think one of the biggest lessons I learned about 2024 is seeing a band live is everything. It's everything. Because in the landscape of music right now with streaming and how easy something is, people send me stuff all the time. My brother, my friends, we're sending each other Spotify links and songs and whatnot, and it can get overwhelming. I know it can be for you. It definitely is for me. I get sent more music in this chapter of my life than ever before. And sometimes you play a couple seconds of something streaming and you're like, cool, that sounds good. I don't know where to put it. I don't know where to stack this song or this band amongst everything else that I'm listening to right now. I'm listening to too many things. It gets to be, it's like streaming TV shows. When you go to parties and people are like, are you watching this? Are you watching that? And you're like, I don't have time to finish the show that came out 2 years ago. Or I'm behind. I'm 5 seasons behind. It's like that with bands. Everybody's putting out great, amazing shit everywhere all the time. There's stuff that I am missing for sure. But when you go see a band live, that can sometimes be the thing that you go, oh, that's it. And I don't know if I ever got that before, because if there's something you should know about me, it's that I was not a major concert goer in my 20s and 30s. Not really. Mid 30s, I started going to see a lot of death metal and metal shows just because I needed to feel alive. And that became a big part of my life. It's just like going out, experiencing the heaviest metal, which I still do. But besides the Pumpkins, I would skip so many live shows coming through LA because I just wasn't a live music person. Probably because of where I grew up in Tulsa, it just wasn't an oftentimes thing. I was held back from it as a teenager, except for the major events. And then by the time I was like a young, broke LA kid, I did it a little bit in my 20s. I saw some shows, but a lot of times I was just trying to do other things in my life and do comedy and trying to make it as an actor and try to write screenplays. And it was like the idea of shelling out money to go see bands. I was like, I just can't justify that. And that may shock a lot of you. It may shock a lot of you. I just got really used to not going to see live shows. But ever since this happened for me, I get invited to concerts all the time. I get to go to concerts all the time. And that's why I was invited to Pearl Jam this year, and it was the first time I'd seen him. And so many people were like, how could you have not seen Pearl Jam? And it's like, look, I never justified going to see live music up until the past few years. Honestly, I would skip. The Pumpkins, when they were coming through for Zeitgeist, I did not go see them then. I remember when he was doing Tear Garden for Kaleidoscope, I went and saw a little record release party, and that was like that one time. And then that was it. There was nothing else that I went and saw until the reunion in 2018. So even as my most favorite band in the world, I wasn't going out of my way to see live performances. And it's because I was like, it's not that big of a deal. Like, just buy the album, just listen to the album, just sit there with your headphones or lay back on your couch and enjoy it that way. But I think that what I didn't understand about live bands is it's one thing to go see your absolute favorite band live, but it's another thing to see bands play live that you've never heard. And you see the performance and you go, oh my God, this is something special. This band is great. This band is amazing. And then you go listen to the album and you're immediately like caught up into what this band is about. And this is another time where it happened with this band, Freako. So I went to the Pygmalion Festival in Champaign-Urbana, Illinois, back in my alma mater. And I went and saw, this was a big fun event for me to go back there and also parallel it with my time at Riot Fest. And while I was there, one of the bands playing was called Freako. And I didn't know anything about this band. They're a Chicago band. They're specifically from Evanston. They went to, where does it says? It says they all members were graduates of Evanston Township High School. And they started in 2019, and it was basically Nico Capitan, Luke Stamos, and Bailey Minzenberger. And I don't think Luke is in the project anymore, but now it's just Nico and Bailey. So this band started in 2019. They're playing Pygmalion. I don't know anything about them, but I'm trying to connect with as many bands as I can while I'm there to ask them some questions about their influences. And I made a video with Freako. I get a chance to meet them. I've listened to a little bit of their album. It sounds pretty good. And then I go watch them play. And it was awesome. They were doing some noise rock stuff that was reminiscent of Sonic Youth. His voice had kind of some of his more fragile vocal styles reminded me of some Jeff Buckley. I wouldn't say like the soaring Jeff Buckley. It was just the fragile vibrato moments. But then there were other moments that he reminded me of Conor Oberst. But the musicality of this group was really impressive to me. And I was like, this is something special too. And I wouldn't have had that experience had I not seen them play live. And then immediately I went and listened to the album after seeing them play live. And I was like, I get it. So it's amazing what this can do when you hear these songs. Like on Freako's, let me bring it up here. So Crashing Through is a great song. Chemical is a great song. And then there's this delicate, beautiful piece on here called For Ella. And it was really when I was listening to the album that I heard For Ella. And I was like, yeah, I'm into Freako. They're on the list. Next, we've got Julie Christmas. Now, for fans of the show, you saw that I had Julie Christmas on the show to talk about the release of her album, Ridiculous and Full of Blood. And that's another thing. Coming on my show is look, I'm going to spend a lot of time with your music if you come on my show. I'm not saying like I'm only going to give my best albums to guests who come on the show, but it sure as hell changes the landscape when you spend time with the person who put the music together. People in the project, Chris Enriquez playing drums in here, and you really dive into an album for your guest, and then after your guest leaves. And this album was another just absolute amazing journey. The intensity of this album, the energy was just unbelievable. If you haven't spent any time with it, it's heavier, because Julie Christmas, she's from Brooklyn, New York. I covered this on her episode. She spent a lot of her career as a vocalist for the band Made Out of Babies and Battle of Mice. And she's been a lot, involved in other projects like Cult of Luna. She did some vocals for them. So she's always been involved with these heavy projects that have the scream and the real heavy driving riffs. But Ridiculous and Full of Blood really is such a cool collection of music. And I remember when she was on the show and she talked about being in the studio and them all kind of coming together on the song The Lighthouse, which I think I shared on that episode. By the way, I have a playlist that I made on Spotify to keep track of all these albums all year long, but it's the entire albums. So I've made a playlist that's just one or two songs from every album that made it from my top 10 to the honorable mentions. And I'm going to put that out for you. So you can go, and if you just want to have a little sample of what my favorites were, there it is. And it'll make it a lot easier for you. All right, now we get to Elbow Audio Vertigo. This is their 10th studio album, a band that's been around for a very long time from Manchester, England. Started in 1990, and it's pretty much the same group of people: Guy Garvey, Craig Potter, Mark Potter, Pete Turner, and just not too long ago, a few years ago, they replaced Richard Jupp with now drummer Alex Reeves. But they've been around for a long time, and I've been a fan for a long time. I got Asleep in the Back right when it came out, back in the 90s. And I've been a fan of this band ever since. And it's one of those bands that Guy Garvey's voice is just, it's so comforting. There's something about the sound of his voice. He's got this, it's just the quality of Guy Garvey's voice is so signature him The moment I hear him singing anywhere, I'm just like, yep, there he is. I just feel like I just kind of feel cozy no matter what they do, because this album does some funky stuff. It goes all over the place. It does some different styles and, different instrumentation and stuff that's kind of sounds like it's creeping noir. And then they've got ones that are like sweeping, and then they've got the more intimate songs, but all of it's got that Guy Garvey vocal style on it. And every time I hear him, I think he's great. And one of the coolest things that happened this year also was that I shared my love of the band Elbow, and then their team, their label, their management reached out and were like, hey, we appreciate it so much. And they not only sent me Elbow's records, but they sent me a test pressing of Audio Vertigo, and all of them signed it. And that to this day is like probably one of the coolest things. I mean, I've gotten so many amazing gifts and things sent my way, but that is a cherished possession of mine that I will just love to the day I die, because it's not Audio Vertigo like printed for the public. It's a white sleeve and it says test vinyl pressing, and then on the outside all of them have signed it. And I'm just so honored to have that. But this album is such a cool experience all the way through. If you've never spent much time with Elbow, there's plenty for you to get into, because they have 10 studio albums, and I think all of them are pretty fantastic. All right, nobody was surprised when I threw this in my top 10. Of course, you know me. The Smashing Pumpkins, Agori Mori May, had to be done. But let me tell you, I didn't do it kind of on a whim, and I didn't put them in there because I was like, well, it's just the Pumpkins, and they get to always have a spot in my top 10. Had I not really been blown away by the album, then I probably would have just put it in the honorable mentions. Because you're going to see in a little bit, Dark Matter, which I thought was a really great album, did make it in top 10, but I would say, dude, Dark Matter was like probably 11 or 12. It was just tough. It was like you have to pick the albums that got the most time, or you sit there and you go, wow, this one really, really did something to me this year. And Agori Mori May, for a Pumpkins fan, we've been waiting for something like this. I've been waiting for the guitar. I've been waiting for the heavy, the use of Jimmy. Because Sear, Shiny and Oh So Bright, Autumn, they have moments that I really enjoy. They go different places. And as a diehard, I bought them all and I listened to them all. But we'd been kind of hoping and praying for that heavier guitar-driven album for years, and there'd been rumors of it for years. And when it came and it dropped, and I put this album on, and it starts out with Eden. It's just this epic long song. There's this part in the middle of it where he starts playing guitar, and I'm like, whoa, this sounds like Gish. And then it's getting heavy. And I was just like, yes, this is what I've been waiting for. This is the album I've been waiting for. And I'll tell you, every song on this, I'm going to say there wasn't much that I was disappointed in on Agori Mori May at all. Eden, Pentagrams, Sayomi, Pentecost, War Dreams of Itself, Who Goes There, 999, Go with the Fall, Sycoris, Murnau. I mean, it's not that long of an album, which is a nice thing. Because Billy can write a lot of songs. He can make a ton of songs. He can give you, a 33-song mini opera, rock opera. But I think that the way that this came out all at once, no singles, it was perfect. It was like just going out and buying a CD and being like, oh, these are the songs we get. And all of them were tight. It was a pretty damn good album. And so that's why it got to be in my top 10. This is their 13th studio album. And obviously, the Smashing Pumpkins have been around since 1988, Chicago, Illinois. If you weren't aware, I've talked about them endlessly on my show and in my videos. But Agori Mori May was a deserving spot for me personally in my top 10. All right, we're already getting close to the end. Next, look, if you've been like, wow, a lot of these bands that he did at the top of the top 10 have been newer and more, like youthful bands and bands that haven't been around very long. Well, this is where we get on the countdown where we're getting into the favorites, the ones that have been around for a long time, the heavy hitters. The Cure drops a new album, first one since 2008. So it's been 16 years since they've given us anything. And this is their 14th studio album, Songs of a Lost World. it was just great to get a new Cure album. It was great. You put it on and you're like, yep, there's Robert Smith. There's that sound. There it is. There's that warm blanket. There's that comfort. There's my day of sitting and looking out my window as it rains. I can cry, lean against the wall. I needed a Songs of a Lost World in my life. I needed it. I needed this to be here. And I'm glad it was in here, so it made it in my top 10. It was something that I was not only thrilled to get, but when I put it on, I was like, holy shit. And I've only ever seen The Cure at Riot Fest live. I've seen them play about 2 hours at Riot Fest, but I'd love to see them just on their own headlining tour, their own headlining show. But some of the standouts for me on this album, I Can Never Say Goodbye. Of course, I loved the ones that they released with Alone, A Fragile Thing. But I Can Never Say Goodbye is one that really I was like, yep, this reminds me of listening to Wish. Special. And here we come to Cursive, Devourer, another guest of Waterproof Records, Tim Kasher. Tim Kasher, what a cool guy. We ran into each other recently at K-Rock's Almost Acoustic Christmas, and I got a chance to tell him in person. I got to say, by the way, I'm pretty sure Devourer is getting in my top 10. And he was like, oh, yeah, really? And I was stoked to tell him that because I just think it was a great offering. It was a great album to come out. And the song, I was enjoying Botch Job and the songs he was putting out and releasing. I was listening to the whole album, but when I got to the song What the Fuck, that was the one where I was like, hell yeah. That was the song that I really needed from him. Because he has this ability to make something feel like it's volatile and dangerous, but you're allowed to spend time with it. You know, like it's a little punky and moshy, like your arms flailing, but you're allowed to, and you're allowed to be close to it. I don't know how to put that in any other words, but I enjoyed Devourer. He has maintained so much energy and strength as a songwriter and his voice. Tim Kasher's sound and Cursive sound is so uniquely theirs, and that is what you get on this album. And I'm not saying it's a repeat of previous Cursive albums. It's exactly what you wanted to get. All right, now we're going to get to the number 10 slot. And the number 10 slot goes to Hello Mary's Amita Ox, another one that I experienced at Best Friends Forever. And I got to say that before I had Hello Mary in that spot, Dark Matter was in there. Pearl Jam's Dark Matter was in that same spot. And, maybe I should have just put it in there. And then that way everybody be like, oh, okay, yeah, of course, that's fitting. Pearl Jam deserves to have that ranking in your list. You got to see them live. They sent you the signed Dark Matter. Like, of course, you're going to put them in your top 10. And it was right there. And it was a tough decision to make. It really was. I didn't make the decision easily. There was something about putting Hello Mary, a group of 3 young, up-and-coming New York City musicians that were just kind of hitting the ground running, giving them just a little spotlight, felt good. It felt good to say, not only did I like the album, but I was like, Pearl Jam doesn't need my help. I mean, neither does the Smashing Pumpkins, neither does The Cure. They don't need my help. I mean, nobody really needs my help. But it was nice to just say, well, of course, everybody in the world, Pearl Jam, Dark Matter, on so many lists. But hey, if you didn't know, Hello Mary's Amita Ox. And I'm telling you, when I heard the song 0%, when that bass just went dun, 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 I was like, fuck yeah, that's going to my top 10. I got a chance to talk to all 3 of them at Best Friends Forever, and I got a chance to briefly interview them and ask them about their influences. I haven't published that video because when I was at Best Friends Forever, I was doing that with so many artists, with Jawbox and with Mannequin Pussy, and then I was turning around and doing, like I felt like every day I was doing that interview style. And so when I got done with the festival, I was like, I feel like my audience is kind of over these like brief interviews at the festival. I just felt like I maybe had burned everybody out from that format. So I didn't publish it, but now I think that I've put them on the list, and I feel like it's probably time to share that video as a throwback, just to show everybody a little bit more about the three members of Hello Mary, which is Stella Wave, Helena Strait, and Michaela Oppenheimer. So that is a really cool album. Seeing them live was amazing because there's three of them up on stage, a lot of power in their performance, the intensity, the energy, and the way they harmonize together. And it's kind of spooky and dreamy, and it comes in, it's rocky. It really, some of the distorted bass tones and different styles and things that they have going on in this band. I was just really, really impressed. Okay, so now that we've gotten through the top 10, I do want to talk about all my honorable mentions. And I know I've kind of hemmed and hawed a little bit over Pearl Jam's Dark Matter and where that belonged in my top 10. And I think it's only because of the sensitivity over the reactions when people saw that it wasn't in my top 10. I think that I feel like I have to have a conversation with the audience, even though most of you are going to be completely understanding and have rational responses. But just FYI, by making that video on social media that said, these are my top 10 artists, and then having Dark Matter by Pearl Jam be in my honorable mentions and not my top 10, surprised some people, but other people kind of reacted negatively to it. Like, oh, so they send you a signed album and you go see them in concert for the first time ever. You basically, look, I don't want to get into this, but like the person was suggesting that like I was bribed by the band and that I didn't even have the decency. I'm not enough of a real fan to put in my top 10, which doesn't make any sense. Because if I'd put him in my top 10, then he would have said I was bribed. And if I don't put him in my top 10, then I'm not bribed and I'm not a real fan. So it was just a total nonsense comment. But that's neither here nor there. I had a decision to make about my top 10, and I loved Dark Matter. I loved getting a chance to experience it live with the band. I loved seeing them live and in concert and experiencing Dark Matter. I think it's a great album. I think they did a kick-ass job on it. I think it's amazing. When I saw them play live, I enjoyed when they did some of the songs off the album. Of course, I was more excited to see stuff off of 10 and Vitology and Versus because I'd never seen the band before. So I'm like weeping over Black because I've never seen Pearl Jam perform live. It was like I had never experienced that before. But I loved the album, and it was a very high-ranked. But just wait till you hear the rest of the albums that I have in my honorable mentions that are just like, they're like right outside. Maybe I should just start making a top 20 instead of a top 10. I have more room because there's that many good albums. Okay, after that, I would say Drug Church with Prude, great. I wish I'd gotten a chance to spend more time with it. I only got a little bit of time with it, and I missed them at Best Friends Forever because they were going on when I had to get home because I was in Vegas and I needed to get back. So I missed them. I can't wait to see Drug Church, I think sometime this spring. Then we've got Vampire Weekend, Only God Was Above Us. That is an amazing album. I listened to it a bunch this year, went and saw them live at the Hollywood Bowl. Incredible band. They haven't missed a step. They still know how to write these incredibly catchy songs that are so very Vampire Weekend. Like, what's that one early on in their album that's like, it's just perfectly them. Ice Cream Piano. So good. Capricorn. Oh, amazing. Then we get to Chat Pile. Chat Pile with Cool World, the Oklahoma boys, Oklahoma metal. It's pretty brutal. It actually sounds like it was recorded in a cave. There's something about this album that just sounds like it's like in the middle of like an echo chamber. But I've put Chat Pile on previous top lists of mine because I really like their heavy style. It's a dark fucking album, but it's good. Chat Pile, Cool World, heavy as fuck. Not for all of you, probably, but some of you. Then, of course, Godspeed You Black Emperor put out a new album this year. The name of that album is called No Title as of 13 February 2024, 28,340 dead. Which, yes, this is a reference to the Palestinian conflict. They are definitely a band that is outspoken and loud about things that they want to bring justice to and bring light to, and I love them for that. This is a very, Godspeed album. It's a journey. It's time of just spent in hearing and allowing those sounds and instruments to slowly take you into a place in a very meditative, contemplative world that only Godspeed can build. Then we get to Amyl and the Sniffers. Amyl and the Sniffers, they are just wild, crazy, Aussie energy. I think they're amazing and fun and gritty and dirty feeling. And, you know, when I first heard, the song Jerkin, I was like, oh, hell yeah. And it's a lot of fun. I think it didn't get in the top 10 because it's not an album that I can put on at any time. It's like, got to be in the mood for Amyl and the Sniffers, but it's a great one. Then we get to one that none of you have heard of. I got introduced to this from some mutual friends, a band called Double Drag, Alone with Everyone. It really kind of scratched that hum itch that I needed. There was just something about this album that felt like I was listening to some hum. Great band. Loved that album, Alone with Everyone. Very cool. And then we have Idols with Tank. I love Idols. You've seen me wear the shirts. You've seen me post concert videos of them before, and I enjoy this album. The collaborations with LCD Sound System. That song's a great song. It's a good album. I loved seeing them live this year. I spent some time with this album, but it wasn't as infectious and staying with me as much as the album before. The albums leading up to Tank were a little bit more something I obsessed over. And so this one I was like, oh, I like Tank, but I'm looking forward to seeing what they do now. Then we get to the band Whores with the album War, heavy, brutal, assaulting on your ears. Amazing. I love this band Whores. Everything they put out, I think, rules. And I truly enjoyed this album. Then we had kind of the problem of too many albums at once from The Smile, from Tom York and Johnny Greenwood. They put out 2 albums in 2024. They had Wall of Eyes and Cutouts, which are basically from a lot of the same sessions, but they put one out at the start of the year and the other later in the year. And so it's kind of like when you have a wealth of too much of a good thing, it's like both of those are great. And because there was a lot of it, I just, I got to listen to them when they would come on, and, I enjoy a lot of the songs on those albums, but, thank you, The Smile, for 2 albums in 1 year and making it harder for me to choose. Then we get to Jack White, No Name. I listened to it right when it came out several times, and then I forgot about it. Great album, but I listened, and then I kind of got busy with other albums. Honorable mention. Now, this one I feel the most ashamed. I feel ashamed because I forgot to give these guys a shout out, and I'm going to give them a shout out on my social media because they deserve it. There's a band called Low Lives, and they put out an album called Freaking Out, and it's fucking great. It has all the 90s energy, the tone, the style, the way they play. It's a blast of a rock album. I highly recommend you check out Low Lives, Freaking Out. I'm going to make a video and be like, sorry, guys, because let me tell you something. When they released it, I shared it on my stories. And I don't know what happened when I was compiling my video. I was like, how did I forget to mention Low Lives? Like, I had a list of all the album covers and which ones. And after I'd published it, I remember going through and I saw it and I was like, I didn't talk about Low Lives. So my apologies to you unbelievably talented guys and your awesome album that I love so much. So I'm going to shout it out on the podcast. And then hopefully I can make a video and say, I'm so sorry. And then lastly, another one that I listened to that I was excited when it came out was The's Ensoulment. Love that band. Dusk is in my top 10 albums of all time. And it was great to get new music from them as well after so long. It was another one that I listened to a bunch when it came out. And listened to it several times, and then it got lost in the shuffle. And that happens. There's other bands that put out stuff this year. St. Vincent, Cigarettes After Sex, Melvins, Jesus Lizard, Gouge Away, Kim Gordon, and the list goes on and on and on, making this impossible challenge to point out what's the best album. People went off in the comments about me not talking about Fontaine's DC. That was an album that I listened a little bit to, and it just didn't catch me. I'm going to go back and try some more. And I've been given so many suggestions in the comments that I don't know if I can I'll probably finish listening to all your suggestions by the end of 2025. But this has been a recap of my favorite albums. And thanks for letting me share with you. Thanks for sitting with me. I love what I do. I love getting a chance to listen to music and sharing it with you. And I'm so grateful that you allow me to talk about things that I'm passionate about and receive it so well. And I know sometimes I have the tendency to talk about when it's not received well on social media, But that's just me kind of working shit out with you. You know what I mean? And I hope that's okay. I kind of use this space as if we're just kind of hanging out, having a beer, and I'm talking about the things that are going okay and the things that sometimes aren't going so okay. But it's not stopping me from making videos, that's for damn sure, and making these podcasts. So thanks for your patience. It took me so long to make this episode because I was sick for most of December, for about 3 weeks there. For about 2 of them, I barely had a speaking voice. And even on that last third week, it was hit or miss with the way that my vocal quality sounded. I'm happy to say that it's pretty much gone, but it was brutal. And that was one of the reasons why I wasn't recording shows. So thanks for hanging out and being patient for me while I was trying to get stuff out to you. All right, let's wrap this up. First and foremost, I want to obviously say thank you to Pantheon Podcast, my home base, my family. They are the ones really supporting and pushing me out in the world right now. And they have such an unbelievable network of podcasts and shows that you need to check out. I mean, I love that I'm a part of Pantheon Podcast, but they have a ton of other great music podcasts, and they're growing all the time. They've been introducing some new tools to me as well, of ways of engaging and interacting with you. I'm excited to take advantage of those in 2025. And of course, don't forget to check out distrokid.com/VIP/waterproof and get that 30% off your first year. But this has been the 2024 recap of Jacob Gibbons' favorite albums of the year, and I hope you had a good time. I had a great time spending it with you, and I'll be back soon with some guests and new shows, and we'll see you next time on Waterproof Records. Goodbye.
Things are gonna change. I can feel it.
If this gonna be that kind of party, I'm